What are job swaps and how can you use them? That's what this video is going to be all about. So jobs in Stellaris are what, well, job your pop performs, your population. Your pop can be a metallurgist, an artisan. He can do lots of different things. Now, as Stellaris moved on in time, and in many different versions of the game, there were many different jobs. Many different civics had many different things. For example, the Reanimator civic here, which is something you can use to modify your empire, gave you the Necromancer job. Now, Necromancers only came from the Dread encampment. This made them quite limited. Necromancers, in effect, were basically soldiers, but also giving research, so they were just better soldiers. As time went on, though, you only had the one Dread encampment, and there was really no way to buff Necromancers, so as the game progressed, Reanimators and Necromancers just became slowly less and less useful. Now, in the Stellaris 4.0 update, which is a very large update, they introduced what I'm going to call the job swapping system. This is to keep a lot of these older civics and a lot of these older origins and stuff like that up to date by replacing jobs with the jobs that you would get from these elements, these civics and things like that, because now they can eat the old modifiers from those jobs, eat the buffs that those jobs would get, and effectively just perform as those jobs. So, for example, let's look at Reanimators. But actually, first I want to talk about the jobs. I do know that the system works like it is because I've looked into the files and I've seen the job tags. I've looked at them. Now, there are still some special jobs in the game, not listed here, but for the most part, 98% of the time, if a job does the same thing that another job does, it will replace it. So, for example, Necromancers are just better warriors, so they replace warriors. You can see food, minerals, energy, research, consumer goods, alloys, industry, unity, trade, amenities, etc., etc. If a job is doing the same basic thing another job does, it replaces it. Now, when a job replaces another job, which we'll see right here, all the old modifiers that would affect that job affect the new job. So, for example, when Necromancers replace soldiers, anything that would modify a soldier now also affects Necromancers. So as we start the game right here with our Militarist, because Militarist starts you with a stronghold, we can see the Dread encampment giving us 200 Necromancer jobs. But then out of the stronghold as well, we can see 200 Necromancer jobs. Then if we look at the stronghold here, we can see 200 Necromancer jobs. That means if your empire decides to be Reanimators, all your soldiers are now Necromancers. This system I find to be infinitely superior. It means that these civics don't get outscaled as the game goes on. It means that your empire will function wildly differently, and it also comes up with a lot of thematic cool things. We don't have soldiers in my empire. No. We're Reanimators. We're Necromancers. That's what we do. We don't send soldiers into battle. We send Necromancers into battle who raise armies of the dead. As we can see right here, because we have so many Necromancers, we have a lot of Dread fodder here who, well, they're Dread fodder. We're summoning legions of whatever you want to theory craft. Are these skeletons? Are these zombies? It's up to your imagination, right? Which is a lot of what Stellaris does. Now, of course, for those of you wondering, if I was to buff soldiers with something in the game, with some tradition or something like that, that would buff my Necromancers, because my Necromancers are now soldiers. They've replaced the soldier tag, and they are now the soldier tag. That's why I'm going to call it job swapping, because you just swapped out your soldiers for Necromancers, but they are still the soldiers, okay? Now, this does mean, of course, in really funny ways, if you were to build an entire fortress world of nothing but strongholds, you would have an army of tens of millions and potentially billions of Necromancers. So imagine invading a planet in the space future, and it's just all Necromancers. That's just it. Imagine your space marines are just invading the Necromancer world. That's cool. I actually like that, and I think the system is just absolutely brilliant. So what are some other cool things that you can do with this job swapping thing? Sorry, I opened my own video editing program while making a video. So let's talk about it real quick here. I'm actually going to give you 5 good examples. I would give you 6, but one of the examples keeps bugging out and not working right, and I don't want to, deal with that. So let's talk about Rangers. Rangers in the past were not a very good job. They kind of did okay in the early game, but they got outscaled so hard and so quickly that reasonably it made Environmentalist kind of decent in the early game, but not as good as other early game civics, and it got outscaled completely. So of course we start with the Ranger Lodge, and we get pop consumer goods upkeep minus 20%. These are okay. What do Rangers do? Rangers, of course, are a biologist who produces amenities. By default, that's what they are. They're a biologist. They produce society research, but they also produce amenities. As the game went on, you would get, you only have got the one building to get Rangers. And again, as time went on, they would just get less and less buffs, as anything that targeted scientists directly would just buff them. And reasonably, they just weren't really that good. But now, if we hover over to the research lab, you can see biologists have become Rangers. My entire empire does not do biologists, we do Rangers. We get science by walking through the park, which definitely would be how it would be done in my empire. It's a space fictional empire, okay? If my people want to walk through the park and be Android 17, then they are allowed to do that, and you cannot stop me. But this does allow us to do several things, and this is what I was talking about with the Necromancer. This allows us to scale our Rangers way better, because if we were to build more city districts, we would get more Rangers. If we were to build a research lab, we could get more Rangers. The second defining part of Rangers, in addition to getting lots of amenities, is when you do not clear these natural blockers, but leave them here, they give us more bonuses per Ranger. And as we can see right here, these bonuses will, of course, stack into the research lab. We can see that this research lab is technically going to be producing energy, as well as more society research, as well as producing the amenities that Rangers produce normally. So this is cool. I like this. My entire empire is a Ranger empire, and we just get a lot of amenities from biologists. And if we want to leave these blockers, but I mean, at a certain point, it won't be worth it. If we want to leave these for at least as long as we can get some pretty good buffs right here. This, of course, makes the Ranger early game better, and it makes it just more worth keeping as a civic. So in my opinion, the job swapping system that they're using right now does a very good job in keeping some of these older civics that have definitely been power creeped or put out of date or anything like that. It keeps a lot of them up to date, and although the 4.0 system is a bit buggy, and a lot of people do have complaints about that, I just think the best thing that it's done is ensure that all these older civics and things just keep up to date. I'm gonna keep mentioning it because it's very important that the game has now, in a way, resisted power creep, and in a big way pushed a lot of these older things up to date. Now, the one I'm not gonna show you is Memorialist, because it bugs a lot. But Memorialist turns all your bureaucrats, who are also priests, into death chroniclers, which gives them a priest that produces unity and stability and inherits the ethic-based modifiers of civilians. Now, of course, depending on which ethic you go with, although this wasn't actually explained in game, egalitarian makes your people produce, I think egalitarian is trade. Xenophile, instead of producing trade, even though that's literally their thing, Xenophile reduces pop upkeep. Materialist makes your civilians produce research, things like that. Now, if Memorialist works, which it does have a 50-50 on, but I'm not willing to show you because it'll probably bug out and make me look silly, Memorialist will, of course, make your priests then inherit those modifiers. So you can get priests that actually produce research if you go Materialist, or you can get priests that produce naval capacity if you go Militarist. And I think that's a really creative thing, and that's a really cool thing, but it often kind of seems to bug out and not work, which is a bit frustrating. So let's move on here. In the past, of course, there was the very cool system of anglers, and there was also the system of master crafters. Now, how can we make anglers even cooler? Anglers is a more modern civic that is pretty much up to date. So how does anglers and master crafters work? Anglers gives you pearl divers. Pearl divers are a pretty good job. They allow you to produce trade and consumer goods. Master crafters makes your people who produce consumer goods also produce trade. So one produces trade and consumer goods, and one produces trade and consumer goods. So how do they work together? Well, I'm going to call this one the polymerization, and it's pretty cool here. Instead of having artisans, and instead of having pearl divers, instead we get, that's right, pearl crafters. It takes both bonuses, puts them together, and we get pearl crafters who produce a decent amount of trade while also producing a lot of consumer goods. So that's neat. I don't really have anything else to say than that. I just like the name pearl crafter. You combine the two, you get pearl crafters. It's cool. People like it. That's about it. There's nothing really that much more complicated. I'm gonna explain something to you guys, by the way. A lot of you guys don't understand how Anglers works in the new system, and it's probably not explained very well. In wet worlds, agriculture districts have the aquaculture specialization. On a wet world, you need to actually put the aquaculture specialization. A lot of you guys aren't doing that. You will not get anglers until you do the aquaculture specialization. Once you do that, you get the pearl crafters and you get the anglers. Everybody get that? I see that question asked on the forums all the time. It's just right there. Now, the coolest one I've seen, the coolest job swap I've seen, comes from a double job swap. Much like anglers and master crafters, we of course have the Storm Devotion and Warrior Culture. Now, what does this do? Storm Devotion replaces entertainers with storm dancers. These are entertainers that produce far more unity while also producing physics research. Warrior Culture replaces entertainers with duelists. Duelists turn alloys into naval capacity, effectively, is their advantage over normal entertainers. So once we get these two together, what do you think we get? Well, this is possibly the least practical job in the game. It's very silly. It's not really that good, but I really like the name and their output is absolutely hilarious. By combining these two, we get the Storm Duelist. That's right, the Storm Duelist. I love that name, Storm Duelist. We polymerize duelists and storm dancers to get Storm Duelists. What do? They obliterate our alloys and they obliterate our consumer goods to give us actually a lot of output. We get a lot of physics research and we get a lot of unity. We get 10 tons of amenities and we get naval capacity. If we continue to upgrade our Storm Summoning Theater to a Storm Hollow Hall, we can get even more physics research at the cost of even more consumer goods. Is this worth it? Probably. Is the Storm Dancer good? Probably not. He's very expensive, or they're very expensive. She's very expensive. They are very expensive, and it's definitely not worth it, but boy is it a cool name. I mean, its name is Storm Dancer, right? Like, if you guys don't like Storm Dancer, I don't know what to tell you. Its name is Storm Dancer. We're making an entertainer that almost produces more unity than a priest, while also producing naval capacity, while also producing physics research. If that's not silly and cool sounding, I don't know what to tell you. And in all honesty, look, not everything has to be top tier. Sometimes you just want to do a build where you have Storm Duelists. What even is a Storm Duelist? I don't know. Do you know? Nobody knows. Nobody knows what a Storm Duelist is, but it's cool, right? It gets the people going. Okay, let's then talk about a very powerful one. This will be the last one I'm going to talk about, but I just, I kind of want to get those creative juices going in your head, right? Mutagenic Luxury and Farm Estate. This produces possibly, I would argue, other than maybe Necromancers, this is possibly the most powerful job swap in the game right now. Now, why is that? Okay. So what does Mutagenic Luxury do? In the past, it wasn't very good. At least I don't think so. But now it is actually turning into being very good. Why is that? Mutagenic Luxury gives you the Mutagenic Spa attendant jobs. These are a medical worker that medical workers give you more population growth and more monthly organic growth multiplier. But they reduce your happiness and they reduce your habitability. They give you significantly more population growth than a regular medical worker, but of course they have that debuff. And then of course, when we have the farm estate over here, we start the game with a medical center. This becomes another mutagenic spa attendant. So now we're reducing our happiness and our habitability even further, but we're getting a lot of population growth. Now, farm estate also gives you medical workers out of your capital. You can see this one's going. That's right, more mutagenic spa attendants. Now, you might be wondering to yourself, okay, you just created 500 mutagenic spa attendants. And you're right, this is reducing our happiness by quite a lot. How much, in fact? Our happiness is being tanked by 15%, and I believe that's a 15%. Yep, that's after modifiers, 15%. We're tanking our happiness by 15% and reducing our habitability by, I think the numbers here might actually be accurate in this patch, which would be crazy. So we're tanking our happiness by 15% and reducing our habitability by 5%, which is good, right? Now, let me explain this to you. This is why this build is actually good, but at the same time, really, maybe not good. It's funny, at any rate. When we increase the efficiency of this job, efficiency creates more people working the job, but like as phantom workers. So you can see here at 10% more efficiency, we go from 120 people working the job to 132. It's effectively creating more phantom people working the job. That does mean that if we get work efficiency onto these mutagenic spa attendants, it will increase our population growth by an insane amount. You can currently see it's 55%. But we will actually decrease our habitability even further, and we will decrease our happiness even further. Now, for those of you who are wondering, those of you who are probably thinking to yourself, okay, but what about when you get genomic research centers? Although it doesn't polymerize the name, and I really wish it would combine the name, they do just get replaced with genomic researchers. I wish they did call them mutagenic genomic researchers. That would be very cool. So if anybody at Paradox, who works on Stellaris is taking notes, please do rename them to mutagenic genomic researchers, because that name is ridiculous and would be way cooler. So you do effectively get mutagenic genomic researchers who, when you do get the genomic lab, remember that replaces medical workers. So you get 700 medical workers. That is 700 people reducing your happiness, 700 people reducing your habitability, and then once you get workforce efficiency, it will go even further. That means you can reduce your habitability by 20 to 30%, depending on how much efficiency you can give them, and I've seen over 50% happiness reduction on my population from doing this. I can splash my population with acid. So much acid. I'm just splashing their faces with acid, and somehow this breeds a lot of people. Although this number doesn't look very good, I mean, for a regular biological faction, this is a lot of population growth right at game start. And as the game proceeds, and as you move on, and you get the mutagenic genomic researchers from the biological ascension, you will get absolutely outrageous amounts of pop growth. And it will just continue to keep going, because you have potentially the highest pop growth of anyone. Now, I do want to specify here that the farm estate also gives you trade for mutagenic spa attendants, and then its modifier gives you trade per mutagenic spa attendant. I'm not sure that's supposed to stack twice. I think they might have listed that twice, but I don't know if this is overpowered. Farm estate, I don't think it's overpowered. So maybe just combine those two modifiers to +8 trade, but they do actually combine in game. This does mean, of course, that your mutagenic spa attendants are giving me 31 trade at game start. For those of you who saw my high starting trade and thought to yourself, boy, that's a lot of trade. Where's that coming from? Well, of course, I'm splashing all the acid on my pops, which gives me trade for some reason, reduces our habitability, but we're good to go. This is the last one I want to talk about. So that's job swapping. There's a lot more in the game right now. There's a lot of cool ones, and I think this is actually I keep saying it, but I think this is a really good system, and I really think the devs did a good job with this one. And I just wanted to make this video to try to give you guys some ideas for what you could do. Do you want to do mutagenic genomic researchers? Do you want a ranger empire? Do you want a necromancer empire? You can actually do that now, and I find that really cool. And do remember that, of course, these mutagenic spa attendants are medical workers. So as I just said, they do get the buffs that farm estate would give to medical workers. So you have anything that buffs soldiers, it would give those buffs to your necromancers. If you have anything that would buff entertainers, it would give those buffs to your storm duelists. It's a great system that will, in my opinion, increase the longevity of the game as they add more and more jobs that can job swap and then eat the buffs, so they don't need to manually go in and make sure, okay, let's make sure necromancers scale the late game. Okay, let's make sure storm dancers scale the late game. They don't need to do that anymore. They just need to make sure entertainers scale the late game. They just need to make sure that medical workers are good in the late game. And yes, for those of you asking, yes, the mutagenic genomic researchers will get society research per them, which will give you, by my estimation, a lot, in fact, of research, because yes, they do inherit the properties. They inherit all the properties of the mutagenic spa attendants and then all the properties of the mutagenic genomic researcher. Yes, it is cool. Yes, I do like to polymerize my jobs. Yes, it can get a bit ridiculous in a lot of situations, but thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And, you know, tell me in the comments. Make sure to like, make sure to subscribe, make sure to leave me a comment on cool things you found, because if you find any cool things, then I could copy you. And you know what? I love copying people, because then I can see what people smarter than me are doing and copy them meticulously. So again, thank you all for watching. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. And as always, I hope you have a great rest of your day.